I think what people have to recognize is that the survival of the relationship was never going to determine your acceptability, your lovability, or your happiness. Of course, like we put so much value on that primary attachment relationship. Biologically, we're wired to do that. We make our marriages and we want to make our marriages mean so much about ourselves and about our lives. It's like we project everything onto that relationship.
Welcome to the Betrayal Trauma Recovery Bookshelf, a space for women healing from betrayal to reconnect with their mind, body, and soul, one page at a time. I'm Rachel Strong Smith, a betrayal trauma coach who's walked this path myself. In each episode, we'll explore books that speak to the heart of recovery, books that validate your experience, offer insight, and remind you that you're not alone. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about coming home to yourself. So, whether you're in the thick of survival or finding your way back to solid ground, pull up a chair. You're in the right place. Grief is so critical. And it's, again, it's its own liminal space because it's not an end even. And looking at ambiguous grief in betrayal trauma, that it feels even more liminal because even in the death of a loved one, that grief isn't an end point that you get to. It evolves, it changes, it transforms. And same with the grief associated with betrayal. Absolutely.
I'm glad you said, and I won't go into it, but yeah, it's often called either anticipatory loss for something that's going to happen or ambiguous loss. And man, I don't hear people talking about that very often. So I think it's cool you brought it up. But if people look into that, it is actually way harder than traditional loss because you know what you're grieving. But with ambiguous loss, you're like, but this person's still here and they're still alive and everything's here, but everything's different and you don't know when to start or what exactly you're grieving. It is way harder. And that whole betrayal thing is all ambiguous loss. Whew, it's tough.
Mm-hmm. So there's a line in the book, and it's talking about how to prepare for the talk, right? And the book is geared towards women, describing like give the man time to prepare so he can be honest about his porn use, hearing that through my own filters and maybe through the lens of just my 20-year-old self. It lands as though I need to make it safer for him to be honest rather than like that it's his responsibility to find honesty for himself. And so I totally own that this is my filter, but I'm curious, how do we hold space for both truths? That honesty can feel
Yeah.
vulnerable and it's not her job to build a bridge for it.
This is such an interesting question because it gets at where, so when I'm working with couples, there is this really difficult space where like the husband is saying, "Hey, I need you to," basically what he's saying is, "I feel very emotionally fragile and your emotions are incredibly difficult for me to hold and I don't know what to do with them." And on some level, a lot of guys are saying, "Can you please be gentler to me so that I can do these things?" And often the wives are like, "What it sounds like you're saying is it is my fault that you're lying to me." And sometimes guys
Mm-hmm.
will outright say it. I
Mm-hmm.
lied to you because you're too scary, or
Yep.
because you're mean, or I don't like the way you talk, or I don't know, whatever it is, right? And so yeah, then women pick up on this thing and it feels like they're being told, if you were just nicer, he wouldn't lie to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some women will really internalize that and go, I guess that's on me and I need to do
Mm-hmm.
that. And then some women get incredibly violently reactive against that. Don't you dare. Don't you dare put that on me. This is on you. Um, I am an incredibly pragmatic therapist and person. So my answer to that is it's really just about statistics. All humans are statistically more likely to be honest when given a chance to consider their options, whether I'm going to lie or tell the truth, and to make a conscious decision. The short, I feel like it's important to say this, little research study story from the book right now because it helps articulate it so well. You get college students, they're given a cup with a hole cut, a paper cup with a hole cut in the bottom so that they can throw a six-sided die into the cup, and then they look in and see what they rolled, 1 through 6. And the researchers aren't looking into the cup. The researchers have no idea what they're rolling. And so they're told to roll and then report what they rolled. And then the interesting part is if they roll higher numbers, they get paid more. And these are poor college students. So the
Mm.
incentive is, man, I want to roll a 6 every time. Well, statistically, they're only going to roll a 6 1 out of 6 times on average, right? The longer they roll, the closer they're going to get to that. And so everybody should make about the same amount of money over time.
Mhm.
And the A and B version of this study is some of the students they had to immediately tell what they rolled. They had to just say it. And the other ones they got, I think it was like 8 seconds or something like that. And then they compared the researchers truly had no idea what they were rolling. So that what they did was they compared what the students or the research participants were reporting to, statistical analysis of what they were likely to roll. They found that the people that were required to immediately just say what they rolled were significantly more likely to lie about what they were rolling. And they found basically no deception when they were given only 8 seconds to make a decision about whether they were going to tell the truth or not. That 8 seconds made all the difference in the world for people to just choose to be honest. So, from a statistical standpoint, giving a person time to be honest. And what I typically will propose is that you say hey, I've got some questions for you. And either I'm going to tell you what they are now so you can be thinking about it. That's kind of the ideal, in my opinion. I'm going to tell you the questions right now, and I want you to be thinking about it. And later today or tomorrow or whatever, I would like to talk about this. And what I'm asking you to do is just to decide to be honest. Just tell me the truth. It's not about protecting me. It's not about protecting you. It's about just integrity. And I just need to know what is true, and we will deal with what is true. You substantially improve your odds of just getting the truth than when you ask someone to just make a snap decision about whether they're going to tell the truth. Even as a therapist, and people have legally protected speech with me where I cannot tell anyone what they say, but people are statistically more likely to lie to me.
Mhm.
The one person in the world who does not care whether they're telling that I don't care what people do. I've heard everything in the world. It does not matter to me. Uh, but they still will lie to me if I don't give them an opportunity to decide to tell the truth. And so it's just a statistics, it's a pragmatic issue. It's like,
Mhm.
do you want do you want an increased chance to have the truth told, or are you wanting an increased chance of lies? And the efficient path to truth is simply time. And it's interesting, this idea of like, um, is it really my job to build a bridge for your honesty? There, The Art of War, which is this really old Chinese book, in there's a concept that's actually used in like FBI interrogation training. And when they're interrogating criminals or proposed criminals, alleged criminals, to try to find out what they know or to try to gather information, they use this concept in the art of war, and it is that you give your opponent a golden bridge upon which to retreat. And so the idea is, if I give you a beautiful golden opportunity to take a one down and to retreat and to just tell the truth, then I have all I'm doing is increasing the likelihood that I get the outcome that I want, right? And if that's babysitting a person, or if that's giving them, maybe quote more credit than they deserve, again, from the pragmatic perspective, I say, fine, do it. Because if what you're looking for is an outcome, which is the truth and, integrity and all that, then you do that. And if it bothers a person, why should I have to create this golden bridge? Here's what I will say, and that is the healthiest person in every relationship will always do a greater share of the labor than the sicker of the two people. And if you are resentful that you are the healthier person, then you have a problem. Like, if you're angry, it would be like being in a relationship with a person with a physical disability that disallows them from doing their quote unquote fair share of household chores, and you're doing more of it, and you're angry about it, and you can't get over it. You're like, this isn't fair. I shouldn't have to do more. Then I would say to that person, you're angry about your ability, and your ability puts you in a position to do greater amounts of work. I think that's a personal issue to have to work on, because what really should be happening is you should be grateful to be the healthier of the two people. You should go, wow, I'm glad I'm not the sicker of the two of us. That would be worse, right? And if it means that being healthier means that I have to take a stand of doing healthier things, I think that is the nature of being a healthier person. I'll say one more thing related to that. Um, Sometimes you'll run into a situation where you have an adult parent and an adult child having a huge conflict. And the adult parent is expecting the child to do all of the labor in the relationship. And I say to the adultier adult, the older person, I say, by definition, because you've got 2 decades of life on this other person, you are required by the laws of the universe to be healthier than your child, even if your child is an adult, because you have 2 decades of life experience and you should be in a better position. And so you are required to do more labor and to do a better job, even if your child is an adult. So it's painful, it's difficult, it's a challenge. Uh, but I come back to do the pragmatic thing. And if you're the healthier person, then do the healthier thing, demonstrate how a healthy person operates. And then your partner either rises to the occasion and develops their own health to meet you and be a worthy companion and partner for you, or they don't. And you begin to realize maybe we're either not a proper fit because we're never going to be at a similar level of health, or if I'm going to choose to stay with them, I have to accept that there will always be a mental and emotional health gap between us. And if I accept that, then fine, I can live with that person. If I don't, we'll always be moving apart.
Mm,
Much longer answer than you might
mm.
have
And
expected.
so many little tendrils to go on, because I will say, like, just from a betrayed partner's perspective, hearing about the adult and the child relationship, that to translate into a partnership doesn't work very well for me. Like, when I realized that my husband was at about a 14-year-old emotional intelligence, and I had been doing the lion's share and I had been resentful. For me, what became the kind of the key was boundaries, was saying, actually, this doesn't work for me in a partnership. I'm not going to take on this emotional burden. And for him, that was a big transition because I had always, and he chose his own recovery and his own
Right,
space. And but it was like when I was in the land of resentment, the antidote was actually boundaries. Was
right,
what do I really truly, and even I see that in a case of a partner with maybe a physical disability. That is a little bit more on a partnership. And it's like, okay, if I choose to stay, this is what it looks like. And I'm taking more of a physical labor. And these are the boundaries all around it. And maybe I can't meet all of the needs. So then what does that mean? And how do I problem solve that within my own boundaries? And then it's not about, well, just grin and bear it. Get down and do your obligation.
yeah.
You're healthier, so just do it. It's really about accepting what am I willing to do truly?
making an actual choice. And if you're not willing to do it, then please don't do it. And that's the boundary.
Yes.
Don't do something you're not willing to do, because that will create permanent resentment. And people have all these obligate. Well, I committed. I promised I have to do it. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, but the context has now changed. So
Mm-hmm.
now it's time to redecide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for people to come to terms with those ideas of renegotiating relationships. The other thing it's hard for people to come to terms with is there are some people who are not going to ever be capable of rising to the level of emotional or mental health that you have. And sometimes you marry one of those people without
Mm-hmm.
realizing it. And I think we have it in our minds that like emotional and mental health um, should be have no ceiling. Like everybody should be capable of rising to any level they choose. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't jive with like any other aspect of human existence.
Mm-hmm.
People have limitations. There are things that people can't do. I can't say to a person, look, your IQ is 93, but I need you to invent nanotechnology, or I need you to do quantum computing or whatever. Uh, they're just not going to be able to do it. So some of it is also, and this is a real hot button topic because guys will say, "I just need you to accept me as I am," right?
Okay. Yeah.
And the women will be like, "But I know you can do better than this, so I refuse to accept this version of you as you are." And that's a big struggle back and forth. I think you have to do both. I think you say, I accept things as they are right now because if I don't, I will lose my mind. And I'm going to continue to push for something better at one additional step. And over time, in theory, you should begin to see what the long-term realistic limitations are of a person. You got to be in a relationship for a long time to see that, but you also need to be able to come to terms with, okay, this is what I'm capable of, and I think everyone else should be, but maybe not everybody is capable of all of the things I am. So again, I come to set boundaries with myself, and that is I don't expect everyone to be like me. I can accept people and their choices as they are. And am I willing to stay in a relationship with a person who has legitimate limitations or self-created, self-imposed limitations? If they don't want to get any better than that, can I live with it? And you're like you said, it's a series of boundaries you're constantly setting with self and others, and many with self. Like I will not demand that people heal at my pace because that's not my
Mm-hmm.
call. I don't get to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway,
Yeah. And if like that, I don't demand that it's going to be healing at my pace, right? And I'm also going to observe and watch. I don't see the healing in a place where I can come and be emotionally connected and intimate.
yep,
And so there's the boundary of then I'm not going to be able to connect with you. And am I able to stay in an intimate partnership with these conditions and for how long? And that is always, I mean, that there's
always a
no
flux.
just definite answer.
Permanent question you ask every day of your life,
Yeah.
in
Yes.
literally every relationship, regardless of the level of health or we choose
Hmm.
in or out each day, guaranteed,
Yes. And yes and no have to be on the table.
always.
And what happens for me in betrayal trauma is that no got taken off the table for various reasons based on fear and the trauma and the gaslighting and the lying. And like, I had lost such touch with myself, which actually leads into really the next part is connecting with myself. That is
Right.
so critical because if I'm not connected with myself, how do I even know if I am willing or not to be in this place, right? And so it's finding that, which here, let's go to that question. In your work, how do you support women to stay connected with themselves without slipping into that shame and control, especially confronting the reality of their partner's choices? What helps a woman hold on to her boundaries and her self worth without taking responsibility for someone else's recovery? That's a big
Yeah.
question. And I recognize that.
No, but it's an important question. Because I think a lot of times people believe that they are operating from a place of core values, that their own core values, and that they're operating from a rational perspective and that there's no outside influences, on their decision making. But what people often don't realize is, especially if you're like under 40, a lot of your core values are actually someone else's core values
Mhm.
that you were informed that you were required to co-opt, upon penalty of shame or manipulation or fear or whatever. And it's really not until like 35 to 45 that people really start to go, wait a minute, what do I actually want? And what do I actually believe? And what are my values? And what does matter to me? And do I have the courage to tell people like my parents or my loved ones, I know I've been saying for a long time this was important to me, but it turns out it's not. And I'm just now coming to terms with that. And can you still like me? And that is a hard thing to do until you're reaching middle age, when you start to realize who you are and who you are not, and come to confront a lot of these things. So people in their 20s, it's like, yeah, they can absolutely work on this. I can just say from experience that I was trying to work on this kind of stuff in my 20s. I was in a master's program and then I was in a doctoral program learning about relational and mental health, and I still couldn't really do the heavy lifting of this work until probably my late 30s. And I'm
Mhm.
47, and I would say I've only been done, I mean, you're never really done, but like done with the hardest parts just in the last few years. So it's like buckle up. But I think the other thing people have to come to realize is that so much of the reactivity to discovering, the betrayal, a partner's betrayal, isn't just about what you've discovered. It's about the meaning that you make out of it. And that meaning isn't just something you decide. A lot of it is what's handed to you by all of these core values that have also been handed to you for decades. And a lot of times the intensity of the reaction is correlated with earlier life traumas and life experiences. As an example, let's say a woman grows up, and as a child, she grows up in a home where her dad is emotionally absent. He will say he's a workaholic. Not a great husband, not a great father. Uh, he financially provides for the family, but he's really not there. And she perceives him as quite demanding and maybe even cruel or whatever. And mom is very placating and tries to just make sure dad's okay and not upset and all that. Um, she may exit that family of origin and say, I don't want to repeat, what that was. And so I'm going to find an emotionally present guy who is very kind and he's very attentive and all that. And she does, and she gets married and goes, okay, I escaped. I escaped, the chaos of my family of origin. And she later finds out that he's, as nice and kind and loving as he is, he also has been hiding the fact that he's watching porn all of the time. And it is devastating. And it isn't just devastating because she's upset that he's watching porn. It's devastating because, oh no, I now have a marriage that is not what I thought it was. My husband is not who I thought he was. Maybe he doesn't care about me in the ways I thought he did. Maybe he's more selfish than I thought he was. Why would he lie to me? What does that mean about us? What does that mean about him? What does that mean about me? It, all of these things start to come back about, and suddenly it's, well, maybe I can't trust any man to really be there for me. And I'll often hear things like, and why did God let me marry this person? So now I can't trust God. And it's this spiral effect of all of this stuff. So it isn't as simple as I want a husband that doesn't watch pornography. It's this is undermining the very fabric of everything that I thought mattered in the world to me, and I'm completely uh, overloaded by it. So, interestingly enough, the first step in this process is actually so excruciatingly difficult
Mm,
that people don't usually do it until way later into their recovery after they've gotten behaviorally and emotionally stabilized. And that is to go back and to reconsider their entire value system
mhm,
and ask themselves questions like, why does this matter to me? Why am I reacting so intensely to this particular issue? Why am I so desperate to control this, that, or the other? Why do I dive into self-loathing and shame under these conditions? And what is it about my core beliefs that are actually harming me and not helping me? And starting to completely renegotiate from scratch. And it's scary as heck to do all of
mhm,
this kind of work because what people are afraid of, I hear this all the time. They go, I'm afraid that I'm going to let go of things that matter a lot to me. And
mm,
I say, first of all, if it matters that much, you're not going to let go of it. So don't
mhm,
worry. But if you thought something mattered and it turns out it doesn't, or not in the way you thought, that's not going to feel nearly like a loss. It's going to feel like a win to you. It's going to feel like a breath of fresh air. But yes, there will be grieving no matter what, because
mhm,
you're taking a childlike approach to the world that is not working anymore, and you're having to abandon it for a very adult-like approach, which is really, really different.
mhm,
And you will grieve the loss of the innocence of that child self that you thought you
mhm,
could cling to forever, and you have to let go. And it's literally like grieving the death of a child, which is
mhm,
very, very, very hard to do. So it's a phase of, for instance, of therapy that's later and it's very involved, and often it goes outside of it's like people aren't going to spend the next 4 years in therapy with me working through this. They're going to go do it on their own and pop in on occasion. It's too protracted to do. So I
mm,
actually don't get to observe much of it. I usually watch the beginning of it. They get their feet under them. They go, okay, I think I know where I'm going. And then they go do it. And I just saw somebody earlier today that I haven't seen in many, many years as a therapist who came in and was kind of just like, I'm just checking in, right? And it was this very thing like, wow, I've evolved so much since I last saw you. And there's so many things that I feel differently about than I did. And there's a few things I feel identical about. And
mm,
and all of that happened outside of the meetings with me. And I love that kind of stuff because it's like, yeah, buckle up. It's a long journey. Just start it and don't quit. You will get
mm,
there.
yeah. And I'm really hearing it's about that deep dive into self. It's going into, and however, whatever, and usually with support, let's just say like
Oh, please,
therapists,
yes.
coach, all, it just, I would
Loved
just say,
ones,
I think it's
friends.
impossible to go in to that alone because it is so scary. And it is, I mean, there's so much loss and questioning there.
And to be fair, nobody, and including a guy with a PhD and 20 years of therapy experience, nobody has the type of self-awareness required
Yeah.
to like break through some of these things. You have to have some outside source go, do you realize? And then you go, oh, no, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't. And, for me, that's my wife who's will say, you realize the hypocrisy of whatever you're doing or saying right now. And I go, no, I didn't. But now that you mention it, I am starting to see what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's more violent than that. It's a whole bunch of, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And finally later I go, okay, okay, fine. You're right.
Mm,
I didn't want to accept it. But yeah, nobody goes this alone, period. You have to have
yeah.
mentorship,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah. You have to. Yeah. All right. Well, let's end this with the last question. You end the book by acknowledging that not everybody has a happily ever after that looks the same. So, what does healing or that peace look like even when the relationship doesn't survive?
It's everybody's greatest fear, right? The greatest fear is, what if this thing that I have watched over and cared for and tried to really nurture, what if it still dies? And we get really stuck on our sunk costs. We go, I've put so much into this, so I cannot let it die. Um, and I never say this to clients, but there are times as a therapist where I'll think to myself, I think everyone would be better off if this relationship ended. I don't ever say that because that's not my place, right? I try not to have too many opinions about whether a relationship can or should survive. Even John Gottman's research shows that incredibly high conflict relationships can be still very, very satisfying as long as both people accept and understand that context and they're okay with it, right? They may be annoyed, but that's just the way they are. And it's like, yeah, you're just going to be a high conflict couple and you can still make it work. I think what people have to recognize is that the survival of the relationship was never going to determine your acceptability, your lovability, or your happiness. Of course, like we put so much value on that primary attachment relationship. Biologically, we're wired to do that. We make our marriages and we want to make our marriages mean so much about ourselves and about our lives. It's like we project everything onto that relationship. And it's interesting because just this last year, I hit 20 years of marriage to my wife, and I wanted to be so proud of myself. I was like, wow, 20 years, man, that's really cool. And I thought, I wonder what the survivability of your average marriage is over that time period. How many marriages make it to 20 years? And I looked it up, and it was 50%. And I was like, shoot. I can't even be proud of myself for making it 20 years because it's a coin toss uh, of whether or not we were going to make it. It's essentially random whether you can make it 20 years. You know, we often will look at people married for decades and we go, what's your secret? And what they should tell you is, I don't have a clue. It's kind of random because anything could have happened to blow this thing up in the meantime, and I would have had absolutely no control whatsoever over it. And weirdly, instead of being disappointed that I couldn't be proud of myself for staying married for 20 years,
Yeah.
it was actually kind of relieving to realize that
Yeah.
it's not my job and I have very little control over coercing something to work and to stay. I mean, any tomorrow, my wife could come home from her trip she's on right now. I guess it's not tomorrow, but in a few days, she could come and say, I've decided I don't want to be with you anymore. And it wouldn't even necessarily mean that she's bad or she's abandoned our marriage or whatever. It could simply be that she made she's been sitting in her own stuff for a long time and made a conscious decision that this was not what she wanted anymore. And there's nothing I could do about it. And of course, I would immediately go, that means she's bad and she's selfish and terrible, and it means I'm not worth loving or whatever. I would go to all of those conclusions that we tend to do because we always want to make meaning out of everything. But if I realized that 20 years of marriage isn't a badge of honor to wear, I felt less
Mhm.
desperate to make sure that my marriage is fulfilling all of my hopes and dreams. And when your relationship doesn't have to be something, it can just be whatever it is. So then you can just appreciate it for what it is instead of trying to force it to become something else. And I think people get really, really stuck. Like the first 20 years of everybody's marriage or whatever, 10, at least 10 years, is I think you're the greatest person ever. Now let me try to coerce you into becoming something completely different than what you are. I mean, everyone is just like, I'm going to force you to become something else that I don't like. So I think it's hard to come to terms with the idea that like life is what it is. We're always wanting to force relationships to meet every need, heal every wound, validate every uncertainty, instead of just being like, this is the relationship, this is what it is, this is what it can offer, this is what it cannot offer. That is so difficult. And to me, happily ever after is really just like a steady stream of happily in this moment with things as they are. And I'm going to keep pushing for something else, something more. And we humans are never content. We are never content with things as they are, which is the only reason we still exist because we have to be constantly pushing for, oh, penicillin. Oh, that's cool. I wonder if we could turn that into or an antibiotic that helps us all survive and eradicates diseases and stuff like that. So it's crucial that we are never satisfied with what we have and that we are satisfied in the moment with this is what it is. We have to do both simultaneously. I think that's the only pathway to create a happily in this moment. And happily ever after is just a whole bunch of those moments in a row.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It really invokes a lot of thoughts for me just about seeing the difference of the relationship and then my own self and healing. Like when I was able to finally separate those, then I could see, okay, I mean, the truth was, is this relationship viable for me
Right.
today? And there was so much around that for me to be able to even come to terms with because I'm a bad person to even consider that. Like that was a huge, deep belief, right? That so the work just to get to that was pretty intense. And then when I found it, I was like, oh, okay, wait, I challenged it. Am I bad for seeing if this is viable for me? Right. And then when I concluded, no, actually, that is a responsible partner. That is me taking accountability and being honest and truthful. It doesn't matter what is going on for him. Even, and I take this analogy a little bit is even if he got cancer, which is something totally out of his control, it's not his fault. I still get to decide if that is a viable place for me to be.
Yes. Yeah, and you immediately go, I would be a terrible person to even ask that question, but you have to ask the
You
question
have to,
because
because
you're asking it anyway. You're just not being honest.
yes, yes. And as soon as, again, all tied into what am I about? What is not somebody else's values, not everybody else's views and decisions and things that have all infiltrated me, but truly for me. And coming to that is the courage of going inside your own self and to see what is next.
It's beautiful. It's hard.
It's
It's
hard.
it's the life work, but
Yes.
you either do it or you die. I mean,
Oh, well,
you
I
have to
mean,
do it. You
yeah.
have to do the
Yeah.
work.
Well, life brings those opportunities for you. It's here, it's right in front of us. And regardless of what those contexts are, we're going to be given opportunities to face constantly and look inside. Yeah. Well, Dr. Moore, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for the listeners. And as always, take what resonates and leave the rest. Bye bye. Thanks for joining me today on the Betrayal Trauma Recovery Bookshelf. If something from this episode spoke to you, share it with a friend or come connect with me online. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Rachel Strong Smith. And if you want to go deeper, sign up for my email newsletter, where I share grounded support, personal insights, and practical tools to help you reconnect with yourself. Remember, healing isn't a straight line, it's a spiral, and every step towards yourself matters. So, until next time, take gentle care.